Hello, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Purpose Today. I'm your host, Dr. April Dobson, and I'm very excited about our very special guest that we have today, Dr. Amy Novotny. She is the founder of the PABR Institute. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with a wonderful power-packed episode of Purpose Today. Welcome back to Purpose Today. I am very excited to have our very special guest, Dr. Amy Novotny. She is the founder of the PABR Institute. Welcome, Dr. Novotny. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks for having me, April. It's a pleasure to be here. It's fun to share and talk, and feel free to just call me Amy. I am good with that.
Thank you, Amy. And so we've had an opportunity to speak prior to the show, but I know that our viewers would love to learn about you. So can you share a little bit about yourself with our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think best way to describe it is I'm love life. I explore everything. I've done a lot of things. I try everything. Right now, I'm a mom to a 1.5-year-old little boy. I have a business that I started back in the end of 2018 where I help people around the world. I've run marathons. I've run ultra marathons. I've traveled to Antarctica, to the Arctic. So do photography. I kind of do a little bit of everything.
That's fantastic. I love to travel as well. And I know we have many viewers who love to travel. What really inspired your love for travel?
Well, when I was younger, I lived with my mom and one of my brothers, and we didn't really do much traveling at all. But I was always fascinated by what else is out there. I was fascinated by other cultures, other languages. And so starting in my 20s, I finally got the opportunity to start traveling. And so I studied abroad in France and then backpacked Europe and then did a volunteer trip in Australia, went to Fiji. And then a few years ago when I started my business, or just before I started my business, I started developing this process of helping other people with their nervous system and chronic pain. And I was hired by a world famous photographer to travel with him for 6 months around the world. And that got me to Arctic Norway, Arctic Finland, all the way down to Antarctica. And since I'm a photographer as well, and I love photographing other places, other wildlife, I said yes and gave up my life, gave up my house, my job, everything, and said, okay, I'm going to go travel around the world. So the travel bug has just always been inside me.
Wow, that is awesome. It sounds like you've had some great adventures, and I do know that you had an interesting journey that really inspired you to help people transform their lives. So can you, share more insight? I know you mentioned, about starting your business and some things that you did before you started the business, but if you can just explain a little bit with our viewers of that journey that inspired you to help people to transform their lives and some insight on those experiences.
Absolutely. So I got my doctorate in physical therapy, and I did that for about 5 years. And as I was helping people in that manner, I could help people, but it was a lot of doing something external to someone, and they relied on me, but they didn't feel the changes themselves. So they could feel that, okay, I pushed on something and I moved their joints, and they felt the result of that. But it was something passively done to them. And so I didn't think that was the end game for healing. And at the same time, I was training to qualify for the Boston Marathon. I had run a few marathons and I was trying to get faster. And I started taking some coursework at the Postural Restoration Institute that got me thinking differently. That our body is asymmetrical on the inside, our breathing mechanics do matter. And so I started playing on my own body first. And while I was on the treadmill running 8 miles in about 55 minutes, 3 days a week, I started playing with my rib cage position. I started playing with my breathing mechanics. So very different from breath work. And as I started playing with how I held my position, I realized I could calm myself down and run faster with ease if I changed a certain way. But if I went back to my habits that I had developed previously and what I had learned in physical therapy school, my body tightened up and I had to foam roll scrapes and do different things, stretch. So once I realized I could change myself in the middle of a run, I started doing that, and I got faster. I flew through the qualifying marks for Boston. I didn't have pain when I was running marathons. And so it's a matter of, okay, I need to share this with other people. Well, put it into a process first and share it. So I started experimenting on patients that came to me for physical therapy. I asked them for their permission. I said, I want to try this on people. Are you open to it? Some said yes, some said no. And the ones that said yes, I tried this process on them, and they got better faster than they normally would.
Wow.
Which, when people get better all of a sudden faster, they tell their doctors. So then doctors started to get to know me as someone that does something weird, strange, with balloons and straws to get people better faster. And so they would send me cases that no one else could get better. So people that were supposed to go to physical therapy, if they had a more simplistic type of case, they would just go to any physical therapist out there. But if they had something that they were chronic or they had other complications health-wise and people couldn't figure it out, the doctors would send them to me. And even doctors would come see me as well to try it out. And so that led me to developing this process. And so when I was hired by that photographer to coach him in this process for 6 months, when I came back, I started the business. I decided I can't just be in one little clinic in one area of the country, one area of the world, and just do this to a local population. I need to try to get this information out there and help people globally, because if I can impact someone in Australia, in England, in the United States, in Canada, now they're feeling better and they're telling people. And so it gets more interest in this type of process. And even if they don't work with me, they start thinking differently, and they share it with their healthcare providers who start thinking differently.
That's awesome. There were several things that you said that I want us to just take a moment and unpack. And, one of those was the fact that you noticed that in making a change, like within yourself, with the way that you were breathing, that it allowed you to be faster. Can you talk a little bit more about, how our body changes by either the internal or the external stressors, and even something as little as breathing, and how breathing can make a difference?
Sure. So our body is set up to perceive different stressors, whether it's a physical stressor, a mental, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. All of those, our body's ready to perceive them. Now, ideally, we want to be in this relaxation mode, and when a stressor comes, then we respond. But part of the problem is the way our society is set up, especially in America, Canada, and even some European countries, maybe Australia a little bit too. We're designed to push, work harder, work faster, sleep less, eat faster, sit on the edge of your chair and make sitting an exercise. We're trained to push. Even don't sit, just stand all the time. So everything that we're trained to do is put our body in a fight or flight mode all the time.
Wow.
Now, our body, when we do have a stressor, our body responds, whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical. It doesn't necessarily say, okay, that is a mental stressor, so I am only going to affect the mind by having this stressor. That doesn't work that way. Our physical body changes its physiology based on whatever type of stressor you have. So let's say I hear a loud bang outside. My body is going to jump. My physical body is going to change. My breastbone is going to lift up. Muscles are going to contract in response to a loud noise I heard that shocked me. Now, if I heard a loved one got into a car accident, my body's still going to respond in that same way by tightening up, and my breastbone lifts up by hearing that my loved one was in a car accident. So automatically, those two things that happened automatically changed my breathing mechanics. Now my breathing mechanically is going to be in a fight or flight pattern. My body mechanically is now stimulating the fight or flight nervous system that lies along the spine to ramp me up. So no matter what our stressor is, our body physically responds. And what's hard is we don't always realize that's happening, and we don't get it to reverse. And that's where people get stuck. Because let's say now I hear, okay, it was a fender bender. Everyone's fine. There's no one's hurt. The car doesn't even need to get much repair except the fender. Now I can clear myself mentally and emotionally and intellectually based on hearing that new information. But if I don't pause and release my body from the changes it had, my body's going to stay that way for a little bit longer and may even persist for the rest of that day. And the problem is, if it persists the rest of the day and I go to sleep in that pattern, we often instill that pattern in us. And then we wake up the next day and I still have that tightness that developed in response to a stressor.
Wow.
That's where we get in trouble. We don't really.
Wow. So, I think this is going to help a lot of, viewers. I think recognizing these things is important, but then also having a solution and approach, right? So you just said we have to pause and be able to release those stressors. So what are some tips? What are some things that people can do to appropriately pause in the right way and release the stressors in the right way so that it doesn't carry into the next day and an extended period of time?
Right. So I'll go over a couple little things. This can be a process. So if what I tell you right now doesn't fix your issue, understand I'm not expecting to fix your issue right now, because for most people it takes weeks to learn how to unwind their body. But let's say you're a little kid and you haven't had any stressors and nothing's built up in your body. So some things that you can do is, let's say you heard, okay, everyone's fine. Sit back in your chair. Let yourself sit all the way back in your chair. Make sure your feet are on a flat surface. Check to make sure your knees are at the height of your hip, so that your body can actually relax into the back of the chair. And then as you're exhaling, let your belly spill out. I can't say that enough. Most people, when they exhale, they suck it in, thinking that if they suck it in, they're going to expel air out. It doesn't really work that way. You're squeezing your abdominal contents, but you're actually hurting your diaphragm. You're not letting it be as effective as it can be. So the way to help you get air out is as you blow out, your chest goes in, your belly spills out, so that your ribs drop down, which supports the diaphragm pushing air out. So that's a natural process that should be happening in our body, instead of us trying to squeeze our body to try to get air out or tighten other areas of our neck, back, shoulders. So those types of things will help you. So let me just recap, because I said a lot, but to make it simple: sit back in your chair, feet on the ground, blow out and let your belly spill out. And if you can do that and you start to feel your chest go in, you'll feel your body start to release.
And I think I probably didn't quite have these, captured, but I think in some ways they have to sit back in their chair, feet on the ground, exhale, let their belly spill out, and make sure that they let the air out.
That's good.
Thank you. So you have a few of those tips for people who can use those. And there was something else that you said that really, stood out when you were talking about the experience with your travel and with the photographer and making the decision to, pivot from physical therapy and making that transition so that what you knew that the world could basically, have access to that information. For you, was there any challenge, making the pivot from what you, thought was the right thing to do before when you were doing physical therapy and doing something to the body, and now just really changing the structure of the care that you provided?
It was hard. I cried a lot. When I was working on this process, I remember going home from my job in a physical therapy clinic and crying, because it wasn't linear. It wasn't just, oh, this came together in this little puzzle piece. It was, okay, this worked for this person, but it didn't work for this person. Why didn't it work for this person? Am I ridiculous in thinking that I could create this process that helps people? Like, who am I, this little person? Why in the world isn't this being done by other people? So all of those thoughts go through your head. And at the time I was looking at it only from a pain point of view and physical structure point of view. Over the years, I developed, okay, we have to look at the emotions, the mind, stressors, and the nervous system came more into my rationale for how I do things. So, but it was hard. There was a lot of crying, especially when I got pushback from the boss that I had at the time, from some doctors who didn't understand what I was doing and didn't give me a chance to explain. So it was hard. It was a very stressful about 3 years of developing this process. And then once I left that job and I started coaching that photographer full time, it gave me time to think about things and how I approach things. So when I came back, I had a little bit better idea of, okay, how do I go about teaching this in a way that people can understand it and apply it? The problem I still have is, how do I explain it?
Right.
If I hold up an apple, I can say that's an apple and it's red and you eat it. Yum. What we're doing is not that simple. And so a lot of times, even when I explain it to someone new who I'm going to work with, they say, okay, I kind of get it. But it isn't until I've worked with them for several weeks, they're like, oh, okay, now I totally get it. And even then they say, but I can't explain it. So there is that problem of what we're doing is very esoteric, and I try to be as simplistic as possible, but it's still hard. And so there was a hard transition to get to here.
So how did you, and I know you said it took about 3 years to fully, develop the process and transition, but what did you do along the way to help you to overcome those challenges that you encountered and inspired you to keep going?
I kept in my mind the people I had success with. So just like if anyone wants to look at my website, they'll go and they look at the testimonials. Those testimonials had to be in my mind. And not even their testimonials, but the results I saw them have, because, I didn't collect testimonials from people at that point. But I remember there was an older gentleman who was maybe late 60s, early 70s. And he had come into the clinic where I was working, and he was bent over. Like, he couldn't stand upright. And when he couldn't stand upright, he was walking and had a hand on his back and he was bent over. He's like, I can't stand upright. It's too much pain. And so he just crawled onto the bed that I was working with. And at that time I was teaching this stuff in person. Now I do it online. And so I worked with him for an hour, and it wasn't even an hour because he had an hour of session, but it was about a half hour that I worked with him, and I coached him on this process. And when he stood up straight.
Wow.
And he was shocked. And I was shocked too, because I wasn't expecting that fast of a result.
Wow.
And he was so excited. He kicked his leg up in the air like a cheerleader.
Wow.
Late early 70s. And he walked out of there feeling fabulous and no pain. And he didn't have pain anymore. I saw him a few more times just to try to instill some habits. But I had to keep that man in my mind, because the next person that walked in that needed something different that I hadn't figured out what they needed, and they didn't have that type of result, I would think, okay, do I really know what I'm doing? And again, I was figuring out the process. I was figuring out, okay, what does this person need? What does this person need? Everyone's history is different. So that means what they need is going to be slightly different. I can't apply the same process to every single person.
Right.
And so I had to learn that. But it took me having the success stories in my brain to keep pushing forward through the resistance.
That's good. You said something earlier, and you mentioned habits. You mentioned explaining things to people, and, people go, oh, okay, I kind of get it, but people really not understanding. And I really believe that our mindset and our belief systems are so important, not only to our lifestyle, healthy living, but really just what we experience. I believe, how we think, how we see things, it really shapes our outcomes. So how important do you believe it is for us to have the right mindset and the right belief systems, and how does that support healthy living? What are your thoughts?
It really does matter. So one of the things about going into being an entrepreneur and starting a business is the primary thing you have to work on is yourself. Is what are you thinking throughout the day? If I had the same mindset now that I did back when I was a physical therapist, I wouldn't have a successful business. I just wouldn't. So what I think about now is not judgment-oriented thoughts. It's action-oriented thoughts and what I can do to help people. So if I think about my YouTube channel, what have I not covered, or what is doing well in terms of my videos that can help people? I don't look at my video and say, okay, well, my hair is out of place. My belly's sticking out a little bit too much there. There's no value judgment. So our mind is extremely important because we know whatever we're thinking about, our whole essence focuses on. So if I'm thinking about food all the time, I'm going to feel hungry. And I did this at one point in time where I was just researching a whole bunch of recipes, and I was hungry and ravenous all the time because my mind was constantly thinking about food. And I was enjoying looking up recipes, but I didn't realize my whole existence was about food. That wasn't healthy. I gained weight. I felt miserable. I was bloated. Not good. So our mindset's incredibly important. And you have to decide, what is it you really want out of your life? Is it you want to go through your career and work on things to improve your career? Is it relationships? Okay, focus on how am I talking? How am I behaving? Listen to some podcasts that talk about personal development. So whatever you can do to be action oriented into what you want will help your life, because it's changing your mindset without you realizing it.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing, those tips and how important our mindset is and what we're focusing on. I know there may be some viewers who are watching, likely very many, many viewers who are wondering, okay, can you give some more insight? I'm intrigued. So can you share more information on the types of services that the PABR Institute offers, and sort of what can viewers, expect if they're interested in your services?
Sure. Absolutely. So I work online now. Everything is through Zoom. And when I work with people, I work with them for 6, 12, or 24 sessions. That's to start. And you can always re-up. The first session's an hour and a half, because we're going to go through as much as we can about your past that you're willing to share with me that can help you. Whether we're dealing with pain, trauma, abuse, insomnia, stress, anxiety, we're going to go through that, and we're going to look at your body. We're going to look at your breathing mechanics, and then we're going to get started right away on giving you stuff to work on to then start the process. And so we meet once a week, and we go from there. However your body is showing up, whatever you can sense and retain, that lays the foundation for the next session. Even if you can't feel something, that still gives us great information to adjust things so that you can feel something that we're trying to elicit out of your body. And so that's how I work. Right now, it's just all online. It's one-on-one sessions. I do have video courses as well, so you can always look at that. But most of my work right now is online, one-on-one.
Thank you. And so if we do have viewers who are interested in learning more about the PABR Institute, or, if they want to directly go ahead and book services, what steps should they take?
Absolutely. So go on the website, pabrinstitute.com. There you can find where it says book an appointment, and basically you're booking a free consultation with me. So I have a free consultation for every person that I work with. That way I can get to know you and make sure that it's the right fit, that you understand what we're going to do before we get started. That's extremely important. I don't want you to think this is physical therapy, because it's not. And so I invite you to do that, and we can see if it's the right fit. If it is, great. If it's not, I will try to help you find the right fit for you, and we just go from there.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Amy. And is there anything else that you'd like to share about the PABR Institute or about yourself that we haven't talked about with our viewers today?
Just that there's plenty of resources online. You can get a feel for what I'm doing by looking through the resources, go through the YouTube videos, listen to podcasts like this, where I've spoken about the process to really help you decide, is this the right thing? Please don't give up hope. I know so many people are suffering in terms of their health, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, and sometimes you hit a roadblock, but please keep pushing through, because there are many creative people out there who are testing the boundaries of what we think is a square box of treatment. So many people are going outside the lines who are coming up with new ideas. So keep pushing through and reach out to me or keep searching.
That's great. Thank you. And I know that there may be viewers who are interested in connecting with you personally. So Amy, how would you like viewers to connect with you if they wish to do so?
Sure. You can go on PABR Institute, set up an appointment. You can email me at amy@pabrinstitute.com, PABRinstitute.com. Either way, you can get a hold of me and we can have a chat.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to just come and talk with me today and share all of this wonderful information with our viewers. This has been such a great discussion. I really want to encourage our viewers to consider the tips that you gave, earlier, just, sitting in a chair, putting their feet on the ground, ensuring that they're just breathing out, letting their belly spill out and exhaling all the air, and, connecting with you either by email at amy@pabrinstitute.com. I believe you said that was the email address, or going directly to your website. So this has been great. Thank you so much again for connecting with us. I hope that everyone continues to stay in the right space, see things right, see yourself right, continue to focus on the right things, and just for those of you who want to see those tips again, we're going to show those tips again, for those of you who want to refer back to those. But I do encourage you again to connect with amy@pabrinstitute.com, or you can go to the website at pabrinstitute.com. So thank you, Amy. This has been wonderful. And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for tuning in today. And Amy, I look forward to speaking with you more in the future. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we will be right back after this break. So thank you so much. And I hope you will all turn in next time to Purpose Today. So thank you again. Wow, what an amazing interview with Dr. Amy Novotny of the PABR Institute. We hope you'll tune in next week for another episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson. And remember, be purposeful today and every day.